Hi, welcome to Hands-On, the easiest way to set up a development environment and build a modern UI for Raspberry Pi. My name is Filippo, and in this talk we're going to see how we can leverage the Felgo SDK and Felgo tools to create a no-install desktop environment on your machine. So let's start with a few words about my employer. Felgo is a company based in Austria, but it has employers all over the world, so we're scattered a bit around. And it's both a Qt technology partner and Qt service partner. The goal is to extend Qt to non-desktop platform, and we've been doing this for the last 10 years. We really love Qt. We really want to make it strive as the best possible cross-platform solution. What about me? Well, by day, as I said, I'm a software engineer at Felgo, working mostly on the Qt part and the Android part, and by night, I write open source applications. I'm also the author of Cool Retro Term, the terminal emulator that looks retro. So let's start by giving an overview of Felgo. Felgo is composed by two main parts. We have the Felgo SDK, which is based on Qt and extends it with more than 200 new APIs. So some control to simplify the application structure, the application UI, and at the same time, all the native controls to gather information from native plugins or native platforms such as iOS and Android. And we also have a set of development tools on top of the Felgo SDK, which will increase your productivity, making it faster to develop applications. The targets are again as Qt, mobile, desktop, and also the embedded boards. So let's try to stress the pain points without Qt and Felgo. First and foremost, we have the complex tool chains. Sometimes manufacturer provides different tool chains for different boards, so it's not very straightforward to keep track of all the updates and all the setups of the different tool chains for different boards. Deployment time is very consuming because often it takes a while until you get from code to an actual version running on your development board. So this makes the UI development iteration very, very slow. So you often want to change something and immediately see the result and build on top of that and keep building on top of that. It's also very hard to write some code that is actually platform independent. So very often your embedded device is not a single solution, but it has to have different applications which are based on it, secondary screen, or you want to have to interact with it via a mobile application. So sharing code with other applications is very, very important. Last but not least, you really need access to the development board itself. So sometimes it is not so straightforward. You have less boards than developers. And so how can we kind of simulate what is going on with the development board on other machines? Let's try to understand how we're going to approach this problem. So we're going to first show you how to install the tools on a Raspberry Pi, the tools you need. Then we're going to explain a bit how Felgo Hot Reload works. And we're going to see it in action using together the Felgo Hot Reload and the Cloud IDE. So let's start with the first part. We want to install the Felgo tools on a Raspberry Pi. So the first thing, let's start from scratch from the bare bones. Just download the Raspberry Pi OS from raspberrypi.org and flash the image on your SD card. Once you boot your image, everything went smoothly. You can run sudo raspi config, which will take care of a few things such as the SSH connection and some simple setup. You just keep following your instructions until you have a working Linux system on your Raspberry Pi. It's now time to install the Felgo Live Client. The Felgo Live Client is that piece of software which will allow you to receive QML files from the live server and actually apply the changes live in real time. So we have just this one-liner that you can basically copy and paste blindly, and just install the latest version of your Felgo Live client. Then you can launch it by typing in the command yourself or using SSH to run it. And that's it. So now you can go back to your desktop, your mom's laptop, whatever. So no need to have any Qt or any kind of dependency installed. And you can go to IDE felgo.com, new project, import an app demo, pick one of the 20 open source applications that Felgo provides or start fresh and click on use template. You will find a user interface which is almost like that. And we're going to see it live in a second. So why don't we try everything live? Okay, so let's start to put some of this theory into practice, and we're going to create a small application from scratch. The first thing you want to do is go to ide.felgo.com. This page, which is a very familiar GitLab page, is going to have a new project button, which you can press. This new project will create a Git project, and you can basically start from an empty application with just one simple page, or you can pick one of the 20 open source demos which are bundled with Felgo. So there's pretty good variety. You can find the most suitable for your needs, but in this example, we're going to start with the coffee machine embedded UI because we want to create a kind of a UI for coffee machines. So it looks like a good candidate. I'm going to click on use template. I'm going to give it a great name, such as awesome coffee. And I'm going to click on create project. So we are brought back to this standard UI Git repository interface, but we can also press on this Web IDE button over here, which will open up the project in the Web IDE. This kind of resembles Qt Creator. You have on your left page the list of project source files. You have your current file in here. You have a console, and on the right hand side, importantly, you have a web live client, which is running the source code that you are editing. As soon as changes are saved inside these files, they are automatically pushed to the live clients, who will update its state, will update the code, preserving the application state. One client is connected right now, but you can have multiple of them. So in this example, I also have my Android device connected. This is the Felgo Dev app. The Felgo Dev app automatically picks up that I do have a web IDE connected, and this is the project that's running on it, so I can already see it. I can press coffee machine, and I should see my code running also here. So, shall we start making some changes? For starters, I'm going to take the last recipe and I want to create a new recipe for coffee. It's a coffee that I tried last summer. It was very nice. It's called Espresso, which is basically let's say a miniature version of a cappuccino. So it has very few coffees in espresso after all. So let's go for 0.5 in here, a bit of milk and a bit of foam. I'm not sure that's the exact recipe, but that will do for now. And I'm going to press Ctrl S. Now, as you can see, if I scroll to the end of this, I find my new coffee in here. I can also go on my mobile phone and see that we actually have a new coffee in here. Let's try to make some more changes. There's a small bug. We have like 4 pages, but now there's a 5th one, so possibly there is a hard-coded page number. Okay, so this should be presets.length. Control S, and we see now that we have all the 5 pages. Next, I don't really like this vapor animation in here, so I'm going to find where it is. It is here. and I'm going to set the visible property to false. Control S. Okay, now it's a bit better, and we see that every change is actually reflected in both applications. So let's do something more. I want to add a new ingredient for this coffee machine because, I mean, every nice coffee has some kind of cocoa in it. So let's do that. I'm going to add it to all of the coffees, but I'm going to set it to false, so to 0 for all of them, but the espresso. Again, this is not the original recipe, but for the moment we don't care about that. So in here I'm going to have a cocoa 0.2 again. Okay, so I can save it, but that doesn't change the application that's running, of course. So the next step would be adding one of these sliders. We do have 3 of them. We want to add another one. So let's try to find one of them. They are here. And let's create a copy of one. Again, not the best way to work with QML, but that's fine at the moment. This will be cocoa, and we have cocoa written on it. The color, we can keep it as the coffee color for the moment, not a big deal. Cocoa. This would be cocoa. And I guess we are good. So I can now press Control S. Okay, so something happens, but something is not right. This is because sometimes when you update the running application, the state cannot be preserved so well, and this kind of things can happen. So one of the first and most important things is the trigger for reload button in here. So whenever you press it, all the UI will be redesigned from scratch. You will lose your application state, but that's fine sometime. And we can start fresh. And we can see that we have the new slider in here, which is still not linked, so it doesn't do anything, but that's good. Let's start to plug it in with the UI. So populating the value. In here, I'm going to have cocoa, and this will be the slider cocoa. Control S. Nice. And now let's actually draw this on the cup. So I'm taking the coffee, creating a copy, and let's call it the cocoa. That's good. And for the time being, let's put it red so that we can see that we're actually doing something. And pressing Control S. Okay, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because there's a misplaced comment in here. Control S, all good. So we can actually see that it's red. It's currently not linked to here. So this will probably slider cocoa. Let's also rename this one, or I will get confused. Control S. Move it a bit. It's moving. Great. So now we probably need to displace. We want to have the cocoa on top of coffee. I mean, I'm not sure the densities, but let's not care about that at the moment. So we're going to have coffee, cocoa, milk, and foam. So what's going to happen is that the cocoa needs to have minus coffee.height, and foam and milk needs to be on top of cocoa. So this and this in here, like that. Control S. Okay, let's now try to add some cocoa, and indeed that's expected result. So let's try to make it look a little bit nicer. Let's try to find out the cocoa where that was. So basically cocoa is just a bit darker. So we're going to go for the lazy part and do darker of that. Let's try to find out. That's good. Looks decent. And now we also want the slider and the cocoa slider to have the same color. So this is probably going to be the cocoa color. And also for the text in here, it's going to have the cocoa color. Okay, let's try again, Control S. Try to add some cocoa. The cocoa slider has a different color, and I guess we're good. So we just change the application, never leaving the web browser. Let's try to see how it looks on my phone. Okay, so of course the resolution and scaling is different, but still the behavior is similar. And we can see also the Espresso, which had a bit of cocoa, that correctly draws it. That was easy, right? So we managed to take an application all inside a web browser, create a new Git project, work on it, start from one of the free samples that we provide, and build the solution we wanted. This worked both inside the web browser itself, and we were also able to see it running on my Android phone. Now, I stress this point because it's important. You can also see it running on your Raspberry Pi if you just connect the live client there. I did not do so in the presentation just for screen sharing reasons. It was easier to show you this way, but it works on every possible connected live client. But I know that you are asking yourself a question, so I'm going to ask that for you. What about C++ code? We only talked about QML code being hot reloaded. Well, native classes cannot be hot reloaded as it would a QML file. That's because the C++ file needs to be recompiled and be on your target device when you do so. So what you need to do if you want to bundle C++ code inside your Felgo application, you just need to change a few lines in the Felgo Pro, in the Project Pro and main CPP file. This file will include the Felgo Live Client module. The Felgo Live Client module effectively transforms your application into a live client, which means that the application, as soon as you launch it, will display a similar UI to what you saw before, so the live client UI. And once that is done, your C++ classes are on the target device, and you can still apply hot reload using the live client. So the way it generally works, the general workflow is you deploy the native classes, build a new application, then you can start using it as you would in a standard live client. Let me show you another example of hot reload. Here, my two handsome colleagues have three different devices, an iOS on the right, a Raspberry Pi with a connected display in the middle, and an Android tablet on your left. These are all three connected to a Felgo live server running on the desktop, on the laptop on your left, and he's editing code inside Qt Creator in this time. As we can see again, as soon as you save his files, the changes are sent by the Felgo live server to all the three connected live clients, and the UI changes accordingly. You can also see the UI is a bit different on the three devices because they are actually trying to maximize the real estate using responsive designs and responsive layouts. This also means that you can test multiple devices, multiple operating systems, multiple screen resolutions, or screen sizes at the same time. In this example, you can see we have an application running on desktop, on iOS, and on an Android tablet, all at the same time with their respective native styling. This is very useful when you need to test many different possible targets. So we finished our application, it looks good on the target devices, we're happy with it, now we want to publish it. How can we do it? without leaving the web browser again? The solution is Felgo Cloud Builds. With them, you can deploy your application for mobile platforms, so Android and iOS, desktop, and even embedded boards. All of that is managed automatically, so you don't need to manage tool chains and that stuff. It's all hosted on our servers, or you can host them on-premise if you need so. For mobile platforms, you can even directly publish the application on stores. So as soon as the build is complete, you can automatically push the artifacts on Google Play, on Apple App Store. The way you use them is to simply link your Git or SVN repository to Felgo Cloud Builds, and at every commit, you can generate new artifacts. So let's summarize a bit Felgo Hot Reload. It works with any Qt and QML project. It doesn't need to be a Felgo project you can use in your application you're developing right now. It works with every platform supported by Qt. You just install the Felgo Live client onto that machine and automatically see your application running there. It integrates with live clients simultaneously, so you can have all the live clients you want connected at the same time. And it also works with C++ code, provided the couple of changes I mentioned earlier. We estimate this to save you around 10 to 20 hours per developer each month. So we discussed a lot about the tooling, but let's now move to something else. Let's try to talk about the Felgo SDK itself and what it does provide on top of Qt. Take a look at this. The orange components are the Felgo-only components, while the black ones are taken directly from Qt. As we can see, there's a lot of new components added on top, and we're going to see some of them here. For starters, all these components are usable on your embedded devices. So you can have a native styling on mobile platforms or desktop, but you can also have custom styling if you want to customize using the Felgo themes. So on average, an application written with Felgo is going to have less lines of code compared to standard Qt because the components are higher level, so it takes less components to specify more advanced UI infrastructure. A good example is the navigation. The navigation takes care of how the pages inside your application are structured and automatically renders depending on your operating system in a way that's more platform dependent. We also have custom themes and styles. We have density independence by default, so automatically you can use DP and SP everywhere. And we also have responsive layouts which automatically adapt to the available screen space. But you can also have nice companion apps together with your embedded solution. So you can have the native styling on both Android, iOS, and desktop. And you can also share the same QML code that you have written for your embedded client if that's required. Also, you can reuse all the Felgo tools that we discussed previously. This means that you can create some native mobile UI and UX with very little code and with an integration with native components such as dialog, toast messages, files, and all that stuff that's pretty hard and requires sometimes fiddling with Java, Objective-C, and all the mobile APIs. You also have a lot of new plugins for monetization. So if you really need to put some in-app purchases in your application, or if you want to have some advertisement in them, you can have analytics to know what the user are doing and how they're using your product. You can have engagement, so you can actually send push notification to try to get them inside your application. And you can also have cloud functionalities, so you can use Firebase to share data across the different users, or you can even use cloud storages using the Felgo Store and I mean, there's really a lot of plugins you can pick and choose from to create your own mobile experience. Let's now move to showcase a few applications that use the Felgo SDK and Felgo tools. This was a very nice project that we did a while ago. It was basically an HMI device for a popular brand manufacturer, car manufacturer, and it was related to navigation for electric cars. So again, it was the automotive industry, and it was running on a QNX hot board. So the main issue were deployment time of the QNX board, because it took really, really long to just build and see the changes. So this was the first embedded project we did where we use hot reload to circumvent this problem and to work around the issue in order to deliver a product at a much faster rate. Another good example is the Lens Smart Clothing. It was a companion app for a device connected Bluetooth LE. So this is kind of smart sportswear. And the Bluetooth LE application was able to talk to the embedded device to see basically the temperature, the battery level, and you were able to use a scrubber to change the temperature of the single piece of clothing. That's very, very nice. Then we have the open source applications, which I put in here because I want you to take a look at how your companion application might look. So we have a music player in here, which you can integrate with your smart Bluetooth speaker or anything. And we also have something which might be useful. So a workout application. So if you create, I don't know, a step counter on any kind of activity recognition device, you can basically base your application on top of this one in order to create a good user experience for your users. So let's summarize in a few words what we saw in this presentation. With Felgo Hot Reload, we were able to automatically see on all the connected devices, including our embedded board, the latest changes that we just wrote. With Web IDE, we were able to code an entire application entirely inside our web browser, and we were actually able to develop a UI at a much faster pace compared to the standard compile and deploy cycles. We are also able to see how you can reuse your code base across different applications, all belonging to the same ecosystem, leading to better companion applications for your solutions. And also, we were able to avoid completely installing any tool chain, and also shown how we are able to deploy the application using Felgo Cloud Builds. We count, and summing all of these advantages that you can get, you can save around 20 to 80 hours per developer per each month. So with this, I'd like to thank you. And I'm here for a live Q&A session, or if you just want to drop me an email, you can find my email address there.
And here he is. Thank you, Felipe, for your inspiring talk, surely enabling many more developers getting started quickly with Qt and QML on Raspberry Pi or on mobile phones. I collected a few questions from our viewers, and I would start with the first one. Users asking which versions of Qt does it operate with? Does it work with Qt 6 now coming up? Also, and which license would work together when it comes to licensing questions, commercial license or the open source license and so on?
Okay, so for starters, thank you very much for having me here. It's been a pleasure. And I'll start with the first question. So regarding the version, currently Felgo is running on Qt 5.15. And that's the version you get with the live client and the cloud builds and all of that. And regarding the licenses, Felgo comes with its own license, which is completely separate from the Qt ones. So you basically have a Felgo license, which will allow you to deploy and compile your application and use all of these toolkits if you comply to the LGPL license of Qt.
Mm-hmm. Another user is asking whether the IDE would be free, the online IDE, or is there any costs that is kind of connected to it then, probably through the license.
Okay, no, the IDE is free for the startup for every license, basically. So both from the free to the commercial one.
Mm-hmm. We have another question. Is the hot reload also available from within Qt Creator or even Visual Studio Code or other means of development?
Okay, so yes, actually the live client, let's say the web IDE is the second-class citizen compared to the Felgo toolkit, which is based still on Qt Creator. So if you install Qt Creator from within the Felgo SDK, you will find a live button which will fire up a live server running on your desktop machine.
Mm-hmm.
And you can still connect all the live clients, as you saw in the video, through the desktop application. So it's basically the same.
Okay. Andrea is asking, is the software usable also locally? So meaning without going through a cloud. He would say he can see scenarios where going through a third-party cloud is maybe not acceptable for customers that have kind of confidentiality levels or confidentiality reasons for their software.
Okay, so the web IDE currently uses a server just to proxy basically calls. So the Felgo Live server runs within your web browser, and it basically uses a server just to mirror the QML changes to all the connected devices. If you use the Felgo desktop application, so the Felgo desktop IDE, all the communication stays in your local network, basically. So your phone communicates with Wi-Fi to the actually live server.
Mm-hmm. And this also plays together with the repositories for the images that you have talked before, right? So the images for example, Raspberry Pis, where you said it could also be hosted kind of on-site.
Yeah, definitely. So
would that also work on all Raspberry Pis? So what would be the differences that you would see on different versions of Raspberry Pis? Or does it just work when you have the Raspberry Pi OS installed?
So it works is a simple application, so you can actually build on every version of the Raspberry Pi. I think we tested the Raspberry Pi 3 mostly, so we don't know how that will work on the previous versions, but it should.
Mm-hmm. People are also asking whether they could use the Felgo IDE on their local servers, maybe hosted locally somewhere inside their premises. So kind of a non-cloud version.
No, we don't have a non-cloud version of the web IDE. So for that version, you can use the Qt Creator, and it should work very, very well.
Mm-hmm. Last question from my side. Was there ever a situation where you actually needed to do that really quickly? Kind of you had a customer and you wanted to show them a kind of a live demo really quickly, and you could profit actually from showing them, hey, come on, give me a Raspberry Pi and I can just show you what I mean in code, or just take them and do some live coding together with customers or something like that.
So yeah, that happened quite often, to be fair. So one of the examples was the QNX board there, which was extremely slow when deploying each application there. So it really took a long time. And Felgo Live IDE, Live Client really helped in that regard, because we were able to just modify something, show it to the customer, that was fine, and to keep iterating on that. And we also do that very often with mobile applications. So sometimes we have sessions with external designers. It's like, hey, I want that icon to be bigger, done. I want the text to be different, done. So you can actually iterate very, very fast.
Mm-hmm. So what are your plans moving ahead to Qt 6? Are you already working on a Qt 6 port, or like going on to the future to a SDK version that works together with Qt 6?
So yeah, definitely we want to support Qt 6 as soon as possible. The main problem right now is that Qt 6 is missing some few components that we really need for the Felgo SDK to actually make the step forward. So we just have to wait a bit till all the components are supported.